August 16th, 2021. I opened my computer this afternoon and saw what was going on in Kabul at the Kabul airport. People storming the tarmac, thousands of people trying to get on airplanes, trying to leave as the Taliban take back Kabul. And of course, there's all the story about it in the Western media, right? There's all the blame game for what's going on. But really, seeing the people dropping from landing gears, people had snuck in and tried to hide in the landing gears of these planes, and then they're thousands of feet up, and they are retracting their wheels, and people falling to their deaths below. Somehow this has really shocked me and touched me in a way that I'm almost like pissed off. I feel very alone. How can Twitter have Ron Paul and other bozos trending when there's things like this happening in the world? And it's not like horrible things don't happen all the time, but just the desperation really, I guess, slapped me in the face about all the shit that's going on right now that we're not paying attention to, that we should be prioritizing, and everything else, all the advertising, all the partisan warfare between Democrats and Republicans, should really be put on hold, because these are distractions, unfortunately, at this point, from the much bigger problems. And I say unfortunately because if people want to play political games about bullshit and lie to each other and have rhetoric and point fingers, as long as it's sandboxed or quarantined, and not actually disrupting the rest of the world, go for it if that's your version of fun, playing these power games. But we're really in the middle of a worldwide holocaust of the environment, of people all around the world. We have a joke that climate change has been happening for a very long time. It's just that only recently, rich white people have been affected. If you look at the coronavirus, why have we invested trillions in a vaccine? Why have we taken unprecedented measures? Because rich elites were being threatened by this too, because it didn't discriminate, because you couldn't just take a plane and be safe on some island in the same way. First of all, islands didn't even want you. And second of all, infectious diseases are not things that you can buffer yourself from or sandbox. And so when I saw this movie, which I have never seen, World War Z, which is after the 2006 book about zombies, trending on Twitter, and that's how I found out about the deaths in Kabul, it just made me sick to see it, because it's this dehumanization. And these people are not afraid of the Taliban because they're zombies and are going to infect them. They're afraid of the Taliban because they will likely take away their rights and may kill some of them. And so this is, a really scary thing, and legitimately so. But comparing it, to have it trend as World War Z, just ticked me off, made me really upset, and made me want to, just talk a little bit about how I see this, a lot of the dehumanization that we're seeing and pitting people against each other is, in a sense, as if we were zombies, right? The idea that any person could ever be a zombie, and we're afraid of people infecting us, right? And as if our lives were threatened by the mere existence of somebody else. And this is something that I think we really, as a society, need to re-examine before we go off and play, the only man alive on the hill, where we are so scared of everybody that we're quarantining ourselves against all life. And so we kill everything because we're so scared of it. And this is really where a lot of this is going quite quickly, with the dehumanization, with the fear of the other, with the Manichaeanism, right? The binary, either you're with us or against us, either you're safe or you're dangerous. And reality doesn't work this way. And so when we start thinking in these ways, that is the disease. That is the virus. And in Northern Native American culture, they call this the Wetigo or Wendigo virus. It's a disease of thinking that you don't have enough and need to steal from others in order to get it. And, we see this with the vaccine rollout, the West and rich countries hoarding it and not sharing with the rest of the world. We see it with the vax versus anti-vax debate, where the anti-vaxxers are dehumanizing people who they think are threatening their civil liberties, and the pro-vax people are seeing the anti-vax people as the ones who are spreading the new variants, right? So spreading the new variants is sort of like this zombieification, right? And taking away our free will, or our freedoms, is also a form of, these are the zombies. So we're basically seeing zombies on both sides. Each side is seeing the other as a killable threat. Right. This is, I think, a really good ersatz for dehumanization, because it's more than dehumanization. It's making into a active, permanent, perpetuating threat where these other people are out to get us in one form or another. And if we look at 20 years ago, Afghan society, yes, was ruled by the Taliban, but their society was much less broken than it is now. The U.S. and the Middle East has killed millions of people, civilians, women, children, men, who had nothing to do with our upsetness at 9/11 terrorist attack. And we needed a scapegoat. And so we just started killing people. And the Taliban, who knows whether they will do the same. It's quite possible that they'll show more restraint than the U.S. government has and its international allies, which itself, I think, is telling for morality and the game of international politics. But it is really sad, reflecting on all of these world events right now, how all of these embassies were destroying all of their stuff so that the Taliban wouldn't get a hold of it. And I just think of what about the ecological ramifications of this? Basically, we go around as colonists, the colonial empire goes around setting up colonies and brings stuff, and then when it doesn't work out, they destroy the stuff. But all this stuff comes from somewhere, and people die trying to get enough money to put on their table or getting enough whatever they need. And we have a system that prevents people from getting what they need. On the other hand, we have NFTs and gambling, which is the stock market, cryptocurrencies, hedge funds, options, derivatives, which people who, through doing nothing, make billions and billions of dollars. And one sees that very clearly that we need to separate the physical realm of valuation from that of betting and gambling. And so we should have people betting and gambling only with monopoly money, right? Not with commodities or people's lives, right? So after we make sure that everybody has, a place to live, enough to eat, clothes on their back, they probably aren't going to want to work the shit jobs of like mining, and, nobody's willing to be a slave if they don't have a reason to. Nobody's going to go into these horrible professions at very, very low wages, living horrible conditions, unless they have no other option. And so we need to create a world that gives people a lot of options because their basic needs are met, and helping people, empowering them to meet their basic needs without having to rape the earth or, rape their city or take advantage of people or steal from their family and friends and future generations like we've set up. And I see this all very intertwined. It's not like we have, on the one hand, the Taliban and the U.S. colonization for 20 years of Afghanistan, and then we have the coronavirus and the zombification of those who we don't like, whether it's one side or the other. And this whole idea of sides itself is a abstract concept, because no actually living human being really works this way. We don't really think in these binaries. Yes, that's part of our process, but that's a learned habit, and that learned habit is a disease, and it's a disease of breaking families apart, breaking friendships apart, of breaking apart those community groupings that matter, those alliances, and making us fear each other. And I have many friends and family members who have just really had intense times through this. My brother, for example, was fully vaccinated for months, got the Delta variant. He was okay, but I have many, many friends who thought that they were okay, that they could get like the silver bullet and then go back to normal. And this is like a microcosm for how we can't go back to normal. There is no normal. We need to reclaim our biological integrity, being really careful with who we hang out with, being careful about the energy that we're attracting, being careful about large groups and who we're indoors with and who we're endorsing and what products we're buying and what we're eating and putting in our bodies. And that's as hard of a thing for me as it is for anybody, even though I try to live healthy. Like, I have my tastes and predilections and weak spots. And these are things that, I have to reckon with. I can't postpone them forever. And capitalism is all about postponing the day of reckoning. It's all about debt, right? And having productive debt. So you accumulate all this debt in order to finance all this other stuff. But that debt is still there. It's the stuff that you haven't reckoned with. And as long as we are keeping our debt and building it and building it and building it until it pops, right? When it pops, what that means is that we've converted a bunch of people's lives, churned them in a meat grinder. A bunch of species, biodiversity, churned it in a meat grinder. And our Earth itself completely churned it in a meat grinder for nothing, right? Any of these stocks or companies lose value, that value, came from nowhere, but it was paid for. People are buying stock with money that poor person who is forced to pick tobacco leaves or to mine lithium broke their back. They sacrificed their lives for. And so that's why we need to sandbox the gambling, speculation, monopoly money from the real resources, the real value in the physical world. There's the metaverse, the NFTs, and this is such a perverse way of living. It's, fuck the earth, too bad, we blew it up, so now let's just retreat into cyberland, virtual landia. And as long as we endorse this, either implicitly or explicitly, we are murderers of future generations, of humans, and of species all around the planet, of life all around the world. And this is something that is very dear to my heart, and I thought I'd share this with you today because it's been really hard for me to see what's going on in the world right now, and in Kabul, and just how the West obviously had no plan. We had no plan all along in all the violence we've done, and I think that is criminal. And this is of course not to condone the Taliban at all. Who knows what is going to happen there? But obviously, war is not and hasn't been the answer, either between each other, with other countries, inside our own mind. It's sick, and we're addicted. We're super fucking addicted to war more than anything else. And I hope you all can see the wisdom of trauma by Gabor Mate and anything else to get over that. It's really something that we don't have a lot of time. We don't have much time more before we overcome, these deep, deep traumas, before we just self-annihilate as a species. And that's something that I want to avoid. for myself, for my son, for my family, for all living beings, for all life everywhere, all beings everywhere. Aho.